Lesson 15. In this presentation, we will be looking at contraction and third-person imperatives. In Greek, some nouns and adjectives have stems that end in vowels, making them hard to pronounce because their endings also begin with vowel sounds. For instance, naos, ha, mind, osteon, ta, bone, krouseos, krouseia, krouseon, golden. Now, as we see here, these stems end in either omicron or epsilon, and when followed by another vowel sound, we have what is called hiatus. In order to pronounce these, we would have to make a distinct break in between those. So, naos, osteon, krouseos. It's actually difficult to pronounce. It's difficult to effectively convey this hiatus. In the Attic dialect, such words tend to undergo contraction in order to prevent this hiatus. For instance, omicron or epsilon plus omicron or omicron upsilon equals oo, this diphthong sound. Omicron or epsilon plus omega or omega with iota subscript equals omega or omega subscript, and so forth. These are just examples of the many different rules of contraction, and later on when we look at contracted verbs, we will learn and remember some of these rules. For right now, we just want to recognize that something strange is going on, that contraction is happening. So this is what we would expect to be the declension for a noun like naos, which is a second declension masculine noun like logos. And what we see here is the stem, na, ending in the vowel sound, followed by our usual endings, all of which begin with vowel or diphthong sounds. So we're going to see, typically, especially in the Attic dialect, contraction going on here. So rather than naos, which we'd expect, we're going to see nous. Rather than na-u, again, hard to pronounce, we're going to see nu in the genitive singular. Instead of na-a, we're going to see na, and so on and so forth. Again, we don't need to remember these rules at this point. We can refer to the page in our grammar book that shows the full declension. So this is the contracted declension of naos, ha, mind. And there will be separate pages for some of these other kinds of contracted nouns like osteon and the contracted adjective krouseos. In fact, we're going to see that declension right here. So we're not going to spend much time on it, but I'm highlighting here all of the places where we see hiatus, and where in Attic Greek we would see contraction to prevent that hiatus. And these are the forms we're going to see for a contracted adjective like krouseos. A little bit different, both as far as the endings go and also as far as the accents go. So again, there will be a place in the grammar to refer to this. It's not just nouns and adjectives either. Even verbs show the same tendency. We'll talk much more about this later on in the course, but we'll look at a first instance of contraction with a verb right now. For example, compare the Attic version of the infinitive of poiea, I make or do, with the non-Attic one. In non-Attic, we would expect to see, or just in Greek in general, poiein. We have the stem poie, which we get by dropping the omega, and then we would add our usual present infinitive ending ein. But in the Attic dialect, and in other dialects where we see contraction here happen, the epsilon plus a, the diphthong a, epsilon iota, are going to contract to the diphthong a. So we see in Attic, poiein rather than poiein. It's much easier to pronounce. In English, we find such expressions as the following. Let there be light. Let them eat cake. In Greek, the third-person imperative is often used in such cases. We mentioned earlier on that there's a third person for the imperative mood in Greek, and we're going to look at that today. The third person imperative is easy to form. We have, so far, present and aorist aspects, and singular and plural. And once again, it's third person, so we're talking about a he, she, or an it. Let light be. Let them, plural, or him or her, singular, eat cake. So for the singular forms, we're going to see in the present just the ending eta, and the aorist ata. So this would be a let him or her or it do something or other. In the plural, we're going to see anton, and in the aorist aspect, anton. And again, this would effectively mean something very similar, except we're now talking about a plural group of people or things. Let them do something. And the distinction between present and aorist aspects is going to apply here as well. And one thing to notice, of course, is that in the aorist we have, once again, as we would expect, a prominent alpha. This alpha is characteristic of the aorist in all of its moods, in all of its persons, all of that. We don't see the sigma, which is sometimes also characteristic of the aorist, but we do see the alpha. These are the forms then, all the forms in the present and the aorist of imperatives. So, pao o, our verb. In the second person, singular, we're going to see pao e, so stop, right? We're also going to see pao eta in the present. Let him, her, or it stop. And in the aorist, we're going to see pao san, in that second person singular. Once again, stop, with an emphasis on the right now, and not so much a continued sort of thing. But we're also going to see pao sata, so let him, her, or it stop. And once again, we see the same differences in the plural as well. One thing to note, again, is that we see here the sigma characteristic of the aorist. We're going to see that in the stem. And we see in most cases also the alpha. This is in both second person imperatives and third person imperatives. The only exception is that second person singular aorist imperative, where we see the omicron, pao san, which is what makes it difficult to recognize sometimes. For the forms of the things we've looked at today, you can look at pages 26, 33, and 62. Thank you very much.